The officer's hand gripped my arm with calculated force. It wasn't violence. It was urgency, disguised as authority. He pulled me to the side of the airport corridor, while his low voice cut through me like a silent knife. Pretend I'm arresting you and do not react. I blinked, not understanding. My suitcase rolled slowly, stopping against my leg. Mary and Robert were about 16 feet away. I saw them turn around at the same time. Their faces changed, something hardened in their eyes. The agent held my elbow and guided me toward a side door marked restricted area. I didn't scream. I didn't ask any questions. I just obeyed because something in her tone told me my life depended on it. When we crossed the threshold, she locked the door. The noise of the airport abruptly cut off. Now there was only the buzzing of the fluorescent lights and my ragged breathing. She let go of me and took a step back. Mrs. Eleanor Smith. I nodded slowly. My throat was tight. I'm Agent Sarah Miller, she said. I work with the Premeditated Crimes Unit. I need you to listen to me very carefully, because we don't have much time. I felt the floor moving beneath me. I searched for a chair, but there wasn't one. Only a metal table and a camera in the ceiling corner. Your daughter and son-in-law plan to kill you during this trip. The words dropped like stones in still water. They made no sound, but the impact was absolute. I stared at her without blinking, without breathing. We have proof, wiretaps, deleted messages we recovered, a life insurance policy taken out in your name 3 weeks ago. You didn't sign that document, Mrs. Smith. They forged your signature. I shook my head, not because I didn't believe her, but because my brain refused to process what I was hearing. Mary, my daughter, the child I carried in my arms, the woman who cried on my shoulder when we lost her father only 4 months ago. It can't be. The agent took a phone from her pocket and slid the screen toward me. It was a photograph, a document, insurance policy, $500,000. Beneficiaries, Mary Smith and Robert Morales. Issue date, 3 weeks ago. Trip date, today. My name was there, my signature too, but I never saw that paper. They planned for it to look like an accident. We checked the reservations. The house they were going to stay in is in a mountainous area, isolated, no close neighbors, no cameras, the perfect place for something to go wrong. My legs started to tremble. I leaned against the cold wall. I felt nauseous. Why are you telling me this now? Why didn't you arrest them before? Why do we need the plan to proceed? If we detain them without proof of the concrete attempt, an attorney can dismantle the entire case. They'll say it was just an idea, that they would never do it, that the conversations were misinterpreted. We need them to act, Mrs. Smith, and we need you to help us. No, I'm not going with them. I'm not going to pretend everything is fine while they plan to kill me. My voice came out louder than I wanted. The agent raised a hand to calm me. I understand your fear, but you will be protected at all times. We have undercover agents on the flight, at the arrival airport, on the road, even in the house where you'll be staying. You will not be alone for a second. How am I supposed to look my daughter in the eye, knowing she wants me dead? The agent was silent for a moment. Then she spoke more slowly. Mrs. Smith, your daughter contracted debts with dangerous people. Robert has a gambling problem. He lost more than $80,000 in illegal bets. They lent them money. Now they are collecting with interest they cannot pay. We found death threats on Robert's phone. They have 2 weeks to get the money, or they will kill them. Then let them pay what they owe. Let them face the consequences. The words came out harsh, harsher than I expected. But I was angry, scared. betrayed. They chose to kill you instead of finding another way out. That's what you need to understand. It wasn't desperation. It was calculation. They reviewed your assets, your house, your savings. They did the math, and they decided you were worth more dead than alive. I closed my eyes. The tears came before I could stop them. They weren't tears of sadness. They were of rage, of humiliation, of a pain so profound it had no name. How long have I been a burden to my own daughter? The agent didn't answer. There was no answer for that. Outside the room, I heard voices. Someone was asking about me. I recognized Mary's voice. She sounded worried, perfectly worried. Mom is fine. It's just a routine checkup. Standard procedure. It was the voice of another agent, trained to lie naturally. Agent Miller looked directly into my eyes. If you decide not to go through with this, I will understand. I can arrest them right now, but the case will be weak. They will probably walk free in less than a year, and when that happens, you will still be a problem for them. You will still have what they need, and next time, there won't be an agent in an airport to warn you. What do you need me to do? Get on that plane. Act like nothing happened. Trust us. And when the time comes, step aside and let us do our job. I wiped my tears with the back of my hand. I took a deep breath. 3 times. 4. Okay. The agent nodded. She took a small device the size of a button from her pocket and showed it to me. This is a microphone. I'm going to sew it inside your blouse. No one will see it, but we will hear everything. If at any moment you feel you are in real danger, just say the keyword. Say, I need my medicine. That will be the signal. We will enter immediately. I nodded. She worked quickly. Her hands were steady, professional. In less than 2 minutes, the device was hidden under the fabric near the collar. Ready, I looked at myself in the small mirror hanging on the wall. I was still me. Eleanor Smith, 69 years old, a 4-month widow, mother of a daughter who wanted her dead. Breathe normal, talk normal, don't change your behavior. They cannot know that you know. How am I supposed to do that? Because you are stronger than you think, Mrs. Smith. And because if you don't, they win. The agent opened the door. The noise of the airport flooded the space again. Mary was there, standing next to Robert. Their faces lit up when they saw me come out. Mum, are you okay? You scared us. Mary walked toward me and hugged me. I felt her arms around my body, her perfume, the same one she had worn since she was 20. I forced myself to return the hug, to smile. I'm fine, honey. It was just a misunderstanding with the documents. It's resolved now. Robert took my suitcase. He smiled too, that smile that always seemed kind. Now I only saw calculation behind his teeth. Let's go then, Mrs. Smith. We don't want to miss the flight. We walked together toward the boarding gate. Mary took my arm. She talked about the house where we would be staying, about the scenery, about how much we needed this time together. I nodded. I smiled. I responded with short phrases. But inside I was falling apart, disintegrating, wondering when I lost my daughter, or if I ever truly had her. 4 months earlier, everything was different, or maybe not. Maybe it was just easier not to see what had always been there. Arthur died on a Tuesday afternoon. Massive heart attack. No warning, no goodbye. We were watching television when he reached for his chest and looked at me with those eyes that still took my breath away after 42 years of marriage. Eleanor, I'm hurting. Those were his last words. 3 words that still wake me up at night. Mary arrived at the hospital an hour after the doctors confirmed what I already knew. My husband was gone. The man who built our house with his own hands, who saved every dollar as if it were his last, who taught me to be strong even when I didn't want to be. I cried so much I thought my body would break in two. Mary hugged me. She held me while I trembled against her shoulder. She drove me home because I couldn't drive. She made me tea. She forced me to eat even though every bite felt like glass in my throat. That night, I slept at her house. Robert was kind, silent, respectful. He gave me the guest room and closed the door gently. The first few days were a blur of people, neighbors, distant family, acquaintances I hadn't seen in years, but who showed up with casseroles and awkward hugs. They all said the same thing. "I'm so sorry. He was a good man. He's in a better place now." Well-intentioned lies that didn't help at all. The funeral was on a Saturday. It rained. Of course it rained. Mary stayed by my side throughout the ceremony. She held my arm when we walked to the grave. She passed me tissues when mine were soaked with tears. After everyone left, when it was just her and me in front of the freshly turned earth, Mary told me something that, at the time, seemed beautiful. "Mum, Dad made me promise him something years ago. He made me swear that if anything ever happened to him, I would take care of you, that I would never leave you alone." I cried again. I hugged my daughter as if she were a little girl, as if we had all the time in the world. "Don't cry, Mum. I'm here. I'll always be here." The weeks passed. The house felt too big, too silent. Every corner had Arthur's imprint, his armchair in the living room, his coffee mug in the cabinet, his old shirt hanging in the closet, because I didn't have the courage to put it away. Mary came to visit me almost every day. Sometimes she brought food, like a chicken pot pie. Sometimes she just sat with me on the sofa, and we watched cooking shows that neither of us was really following. Robert also came, though, less often. But when he did, he checked things in the house. The water heater, the back door lock, the wiring in the living room. "Everything is old, Mrs. Smith," he'd say. "We should do repairs soon." I nodded without paying much attention. What did an old water heater matter when your heart was broken? 1 month after the funeral, Mary arrived with a proposal. "Mum, you need to get out of this house. You need air. You need to move." "I don't feel like going anywhere, honey." "Please, for Dad. He wouldn't have wanted to see you like this." "Shut up," slowly fading away. She was right. Arthur hated stillness. He was always planning something. A road trip, a repair, a project. "Where do you want me to go?" "Do you remember that cabin in the Rocky Mountains that Dad always wanted to visit? The one we saw in that magazine years ago? I rented one just like it. 3 days. Just you and me. No one else. Just mother and daughter. Like before." "Before what?" "Before life got so complicated, Mum." I didn't know how to answer that. Mary took my silence as a yes. She started planning everything. The dates, the flight to Denver, the house. She spoke with excitement, with an energy I hadn't seen in her for years. Robert also seemed enthusiastic. "It will be good for you, Mrs. Smith. A change of air, new scenery." "Why are you coming too?" The question came out more directly than I intended. Robert blinked. Mary answered for him. "Because I can't drive alone, Mum. The drive from the airport to the house is complicated. Robert knows those routes well. He's been there before." I nodded. It made sense. Everything made sense. But something small, something I couldn't name. It made me uneasy. The weeks passed quickly. Mary came over more often, always with some excuse. She needed to check the house documents. She needed copies of the deeds. She needed to know where I kept Arthur's insurance papers. Why do you need all that? Just in case, Mum. In case something happens while you're traveling. It's better to have everything organized. Again, that knot in my stomach. But I ignored it. Because she was my daughter. Because I had just lost my husband. Because I didn't have the energy to suspect the only person I had left. One afternoon, Robert arrived alone. Mary was working. Mrs. Smith, I need to talk to you about something important. I sat on the sofa. He remained standing, uncomfortable. Mary doesn't know I'm here, but I think you should know this. My heart started beating faster. The house is worth a lot of money. The savings Mr. Arthur left behind too. You're alone now. There are people who take advantage of women in your situation. What are you trying to tell me, Robert? That you should consider putting the assets in Mary's name, or at least making a clear will, to protect yourself. I already have a will. When was the last time you checked it? I didn't answer. It had been years, maybe 10, maybe more. Things change, Mrs. Smith. Laws change. It would be good to update it. He left shortly after, leaving a heavy silence in the room. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed looking at the ceiling, thinking, remembering. Arthur always said Mary was too impatient, that she wanted everything quickly, without effort. We argued about it. I defended her. He insisted. You're not doing her any favors by protecting her from consequences, Eleanor. Maybe he was right. 2 weeks before the trip, Mary brought papers, bank forms. She said she needed my signature to update the beneficiaries on an account. I signed without reading, without asking. Now, sitting on that plane, with the microphone hidden under my blouse, with my daughter sleeping next to me and Robert checking his phone in the seat ahead. Now I understood. The papers weren't from the bank, it was the insurance. The insurance that would turn me into $500,000 upon my death. Mary opened her eyes. She smiled at me sleepily. You slept, Mum. A little. A lie. I hadn't closed my eyes for a second. Robert turned from his seat. We're almost there, Mrs. Smith. You're going to love the house. I'm sure I will. I smiled. Because that's what Agent Miller had told me to do. Act normal. Don't change anything. But inside I was crumbling. Piece by piece, question by question. When did my daughter stop seeing me as her mother and start seeing me as a problem she needed to solve? The first signs had been there all the time. I simply didn't want to see them. 2 weeks after Arthur's funeral, Mary showed up with questions. They weren't questions from a worried daughter. They were questions from someone taking inventory. Mum, how much did Dad leave in the savings account? I don't know exactly, honey. Your father always handled the finances. But you have access to the accounts, right? I guess so. The banks sent me papers. They're somewhere in the house. You need to get organized, Mum. You can't leave those things up in the air. You need to know exactly what you have. What did Dad leave you? The way she said you hung in the air like smoke. It wasn't curiosity. It was calculation. A week later, she returned to the topic. Mum, did you find the bank statements? I haven't had time, Mary. I can help you. I can organize everything. Make a list, so you know where you stand. Okay, if you want. I gave her access to the documents, to Arthur's desk, to the boxes where he kept everything neatly organized with that meticulousness that characterized him. Mary spent an entire afternoon going through papers, taking notes, making calls from the living room while I made coffee in the kitchen. I heard her talking to someone, probably Robert. Yes, more than we thought. The house is completely paid off. The accounts total like $200,000. There are investments too. Dad was more careful than we thought. There was a pause. Then her voice lowered. I had to move closer to the door to hear. Not now. We need time. We need her to trust us completely. I walked into the living room with the coffee cups. Mary hung up quickly. Who were you talking to, honey? To Robert. I was telling him about the papers. He's impressed with how organized Dad was. She smiled. I smiled too, but something twisted in my stomach. Robert started coming over more often, always with some excuse, checking the roof, changing light bulbs, fixing the garage door. One day I found him in Arthur's room. He was standing in front of the open closet, looking at my husband's things as if he were evaluating them. What are you doing here, Robert? He was startled. He quickly closed the closet. Excuse me, Mrs. Smith. Mary asked me to check if there was humidity in this room. The back wall sometimes leaks water. There was no humidity, no stains. There was nothing wrong with that wall. It's all fine. That's good. Thank you. He left the room faster than normal. I stood there, looking at the closed closet, wondering what he was really looking for. Mary's visits became more frequent, but shorter. She arrived, checked things, asked questions, left. Mum, do you have all of Dad's life insurance papers? Yes, they're in the top drawer of the desk. I can take them. I need to make some copies for the bank procedures. Take what you need, honey. She never returned those papers. One afternoon, she showed up with new forms. Mum, the bank needs you to update the beneficiary information. It's routine. They ask for it every so often. She handed me a pen. She pointed to the lines where I should sign. I signed without reading. I trusted her. She was my daughter, the child I carried for 9 months, the woman who cried in my arms when her father died. Why would I distrust her? Robert started talking about money, in subtle ways, in passing. Houses in this neighborhood are worth a lot now, Mrs. Smith. I've seen similar properties sell for more than $400,000. I'm not planning to sell. No, of course not. I'm just saying. It's good to know the value of things. Another afternoon. Another casual conversation. Mary told me you have investments. That's great. Mr. Arthur was a smart man. He was. Those investments generate good interest. You could live off that comfortably, without touching the principal. I nodded without answering. I didn't like talking about money with Robert. I never had. The days before the trip, the tension became palpable. Mary was anxious, nervous. She was constantly checking her phone, answering messages urgently. Are you okay, honey? Yes, Mum. It's just work. A lot of pressure lately. Robert was strange too. Quiet. Distant. Several times I caught him looking at me oddly, as if he were measuring something, calculating something. The night before the trip, Mary arrived late, after 10 o'clock. She hadn't called. I need to talk to you, Mum. We sat in the living room. She looked tired, drawn. I need to ask you something. Tell me. If something happens to me, if something happens to Robert and me, I want you to know that everything we did was because we had no other option. What are you talking about, Mary? She shook her head. She wiped her eyes even though she wasn't crying. Nothing. Forget it. I'm tired. The trip has me stressed. She left quickly. She left the door ajar. I stayed sitting in the living room, with my heart beating fast, with that feeling that something was wrong, very wrong. But I had no proof. I had nothing concrete, just feelings, suspicions, strange looks and uncomfortable questions. The next day at the airport, while we waited to board, Robert was checking his phone. I saw him write something, then delete it, then write again. I moved closer without him noticing. I managed to see part of the message. Don't worry. Everything will be fine. In 3 days, we'll have the money. He turned the screen away quickly when he sensed my presence. Ready to board, Mrs. Smith? I nodded. I smiled. I acted normal. But at that moment, I knew, not consciously, not in a way I could explain, but something in my body, in my instinct, screamed at me to run. 10 minutes later, Agent Miller grabbed my arm, and everything I had been ignoring, everything I had been justifying, everything I had been burying under layers of denial and maternal love, surfaced abruptly. The papers I signed without reading, the questions about money, the strange visits, the rush to organize the trip. Robert's insistence on coming with us, the way Mary checked the house as if she were taking inventory. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't grief clouding my judgment. It was real. My daughter had been planning my death, and I had been unknowingly facilitating it. Now I was sitting on the plane, with them next to me, with the microphone hidden under my blouse, with the absolute certainty that the two human beings closest to me wanted to see me disappear. Mary rested her head on my shoulder. I love you, Mum. I love you too, honey. A lie. We were both lying, but only one of us knew it. The proof came the first night in the mountain house. We had landed 3 hours earlier. The drive from Denver Airport was long, unsettling. Robert drove confidently on narrow roads that twisted between pines and rocks. Mary was in the passenger seat. I was in the back. Watching the landscape become increasingly isolated. There were no other cars, no houses, just wild nature and silence. The house appeared at the end of a dirt road. It was large, modern, with huge windows overlooking a cliff. Beautiful, completely alone. What do you think, Mum? It's beautiful, honey. And it was. But it was also the perfect place for no one to hear a scream. Robert took out the suitcases. Mary opened the main door. I walked in slowly, observing every detail, every corner, wondering where the agents were, where the hidden cameras were, if I was really as protected as they had promised. Rest, Mum. The trip was long. I'll prepare some dinner. Mary took me to the main bedroom. King-size bed, private bathroom, forest view, everything perfect, everything prepared. I sat on the bed after she closed the door. I took a deep breath. I touched the small microphone hidden under my blouse. It was still there. It was still working. Oh, I hoped so. Dinner was tense, at least for me. Mary and Robert acted normally. They talked about the scenery, the weather, the plans for the next day. We could go for a hike, Mum. There's a trail that leads to an incredible lookout point. Maybe. I'll see how I feel. Robert poured wine. I refused my glass. I don't feel like alcohol, honey. Come on, Mum. Just one glass. To celebrate that we're together. She insisted so much that I finally accepted. But I didn't drink. I pretended to bring the glass to my lips. I barely wet my lips. I left it on the table. I saw Robert watching me, how his eyes followed my glass, waiting for something. After dinner, I excused myself. I said I was tired, that I needed to sleep. Mary hugged me. Rest, Mum. Tomorrow will be a beautiful day. I locked the bedroom door. I stood in the middle of the room, listening. I heard them talking in the living room. Their voices were low, but I could distinguish the tone. Frustration, impatience. She didn't drink enough. It was Robert's voice. We'll have to try something else. Mary's voice. I sat on the bed. My hands were trembling. They had tried to drug me. On the first night, without even waiting, without even disguising it. I waited an hour, 2, until the house was silent. Then I got up. I walked barefoot to the door. I opened it carefully. The hallway was dark, empty. I slipped into the living room. Everything was off except for a faint light coming from the kitchen. I approached slowly, with my heart pounding against my ribs. On the kitchen table there were papers. I recognized them. They were mine. House documents, bank statements, the old will that Arthur had made years ago. And there was something else, a new insurance policy, with my name, with my signature, $500,000. Beneficiaries, Mary Smith and Robert Morales. The issue date was 3 weeks ago, just as Agent Miller had told me. I took out my phone. I photographed everything, every page, every document. My hands were shaking so much that some photos came out blurry, but I kept going, one after another. Then I saw the other paper. It was a printed message, a text conversation between Robert and someone else. I need the money by Friday. I don't care how you get it. If you don't pay, we kill you and your wife, Robert's reply. I'll have it. I'm resolving a family problem. 3 days maximum. Message date, 2 weeks ago. There was more. Another message. This one between Mary and Robert. Are you sure it will work? Yes. No one will suspect. Accidental fall. The place is perfect. No witnesses, no cameras. And what if she resists? She won't resist. She trusts us. She always has. I felt the floor disappear beneath my feet. It wasn't just the money. It wasn't just desperation. It was premeditation. It was coldness. It was that horrible word Robert had used. Family problem. I was the problem. I heard a noise, footsteps. Someone was moving in the hallway. I put the phone away. I quickly backed up to the living room. I hid behind the sofa just as Robert appeared. I saw him walk to the kitchen, check the papers, make sure everything was in order. Then he went back down the hallway. A door closed. I waited 5 more minutes. 10. Then I returned to my room. I locked the door. I sat on the bed. I opened my phone. I checked the photos. They were there. All of them. The complete evidence of what they were planning. I thought about calling the police, about screaming, about waking the neighbors. But there were no neighbors. There was no one. Just forest and silence and 2 people who wanted me dead. I remembered Agent Miller's words. We need the plan to proceed. If we detain them without proof of the concrete attempt, everything falls apart. This was concrete proof. This was enough. But I also realized something else. I had the photos, but they had the originals. What if those papers disappeared? If Mary and Robert realized someone had photographed them, they would change the plan. They would flee, and they would never pay for what they had done. I had to keep going. I had to let them believe I still trusted them, that I was still the naive mother who signed papers without reading, who drank wine without suspecting, who walked toward the cliff without seeing the push coming. I lay down fully clothed, with my shoes on, ready to run if necessary. I didn't sleep. I didn't close my eyes for a second. At some point in the early morning, I heard voices again, Robert and Mary, arguing in whispers. We have to do it tomorrow. We can't wait any longer. They are pressuring us. I know, but it has to look natural. An accident. Nothing suspicious. The lookout point. Like we planned. You push her. I scream. We run to get help. By the time they arrive, it will be too late. Silence. Then Mary's voice, lower, almost broken. Do you think Dad would forgive us? Don't answer that. Don't think about that. Just do it. The voices faded. The doors closed. I stayed looking at the ceiling, thinking about Arthur, about what he would say if he were alive, if he knew that the daughter he loved with all his heart was planning to murder the woman he spent 42 years with. Maybe he wouldn't forgive us. Maybe that's why he died when he did, to not have to see this. When the sun began to appear through the trees, I was still awake, still dressed, still waiting. Mary knocked on the door at 8 o'clock. "Mum, wake up. Let's have breakfast, and then we'll go to the lookout point. The day is perfect." "I'm coming, honey." I looked at myself in the mirror. Eleanor Smith, 69 years old, about to walk toward her own death, knowing exactly what was coming, but also knowing that I was not alone. I touched the microphone under my blouse. I whispered so low that barely any sound came out. "I'm ready." I hoped someone was listening. I hoped someone would arrive in time. Because if they didn't, if they failed, if something went wrong, Mary and Robert would get exactly what they wanted, and I would be just another tragic accident on a beautiful, lonely mountain. Breakfast was a perfect performance of normalcy. Mary made scrambled eggs and coffee. Robert set the table with excessive care. They were both smiling. They both talked about the perfect weather, about the beautiful day that awaited us. I chewed every bite as if it were sand. I smiled when I should smile. I nodded when I should nod. Inside, I was calculating every movement, every word, every second that brought me closer to the moment they would try to kill me. Agent Miller had told me to trust, to act normal, to let the plan proceed to the point where there was no doubt, where there was no way an attorney could say it had all been a misunderstanding, an exaggeration, a misinterpretation of conversations taken out of context. They needed proof of real attempt, of concrete action, of that exact moment where the hand is raised to push and only external intervention prevents the body from falling. So when Mary suggested we get ready for the hike, I agreed without protest. When Robert said the trail was easy, but there was a part with a stunning view where we would have to be careful, I smiled and said I trusted them. When Mary helped me put on a light jacket and asked if I had my phone, I lied and said I had left it in the room because I didn't want distractions. The phone was in my pocket, with the photos of the documents, with the evidence I needed to keep, no matter what. We left the house around 10 in the morning. The sun was high. The air was fresh, clean, the kind of morning Arthur would have loved, the kind of day that makes life seem simple and beautiful. We walked in single file, Robert ahead, me in the middle, Mary in the back. The trail was narrow. It climbed gradually between tall pines that partially blocked the sun. I could hear birds, the crunch of dry branches under our feet. My own breathing speeding up not from exertion, but from fear. Every step took me further from the house. Every curve of the path led us deeper into the forest. I looked around for signs of the undercover agents, of the hidden cameras, of any indication that I was really as protected as they had promised. I saw nothing, just nature, just the three of us, just the sound of our steps advancing towards something inevitable. Mary spoke from behind. Her voice sounded almost cheerful, almost genuine. If I didn't know what I knew, if I hadn't seen the documents, if I hadn't listened to the nighttime conversations, I would have believed she was genuinely happy to be there with me, that she truly cared about this time together. Dad loved places like this, Mum. Remember when we used to go camping when I was a kid? You always complained about the cold, but Dad insisted that nature was important, that we needed to disconnect from the city. Yes, I remember. My voice came out firmer than I expected. Mary continued talking as if my short replies meant nothing, as if she didn't notice that her every word was a knife turning in my chest. He would have wanted us to do this, to keep going after his death, to find a way to be together, to be family again. We are family, Mary. We are, Mum. We always will be. The hypocrisy of her words was so thick I could feel it in the air. Robert stopped ahead and pointed to the left where the trail split into two. This way. The lookout point is about 20 more minutes. We kept walking. The terrain became more uneven, steeper. I started to sweat under the jacket, but I didn't take it off. I didn't want them to see the microphone. I didn't want to risk anything. Robert slowed his pace until he was next to me. Mary also moved closer. Now the three of us walked together on the widest part of the trail. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Smith? You're not too tired?" "I'm fine, Robert. I can continue." "It's important that you tell us if you need to rest. We don't want anything to happen to you. This trail can be treacherous if one is not careful." The word treacherous floated between us. I let it pass without comment. We reached an area where the trees opened up and the cliff appeared to our right. There was no railing, no protection, just the uneven edge of the earth, and then a drop of more than 160 feet to the rocks below. Robert approached the edge. He looked down. Then he looked at me. "Come on, Mrs. Smith. You have to see this view. It's incredible." I approached slowly. Every step was a conscious decision. I could feel my heart pounding in my throat. I could feel the weight of the phone in my pocket. I could feel Mary's presence behind me. I reached the edge. I looked down. It really was breathtaking. The valley stretched out green and deep. The rocks shone under the sun. Everything was beautiful and deadly at the same time. "It's beautiful." Robert was on my left, Mary on my right. Both close. Too close. "Dad would have loved this view, Mum." Mary's voice trembled slightly. I wondered if she was nervous, if she was afraid of what they were about to do, or if she was just acting, preparing the ground for the scream of horror that would follow, for the fake tears, for the frantic call to 911 reporting a terrible accident. I felt movement to my right. Mary moved closer. Her hand brushed my back. Soft, almost imperceptible. "Mum, there's something I need to tell you." "Tell me, honey." My voice came out calm, calmer than I felt. "We, Robert and I, have had problems. Money problems. Serious problems." "I know, Mary." She blinked, confused. "How do you know?" A mother always knows when her daughter is in trouble. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Mary swallowed. Her hand was still on my back, pressing lightly, testing. "We didn't want to worry you, especially after Dad died, but the situation got very difficult, very dangerous." "How much do you owe?" Robert moved to my other side. Now they both flanked me. Both were close enough to act, to finish what they had come to do. $80,000, Mrs. Smith. With interest, it's almost 100,000 now. And the people we owe are not patient. They are not understanding. "Why didn't you tell me before? Why didn't you ask for help?" "Because we have pride, Mum. Because we didn't want to disappoint you. Because Dad always taught us to solve our own problems." "Arthur taught you to work, to be responsible, not to borrow money from criminals." The words came out harsher than I intended. I saw something change in Mary's eyes, something dark, something that scared me more than the cliff at my feet. Not everyone is perfect like you and Dad, Mum. Not all of us make the right decisions all the time. I know, honey. I know. There was a silence, long, heavy. The wind began to blow harder. I could feel it pulling at my clothes, pushing me slightly toward the edge. Then we need you to help us, Mum. Robert's voice was tense, urgent. How can I help you? You know how. Mary's hand pressed harder against my back. It was no longer a brush. It was real pressure, intentional. This was the moment where everything could change, where I could step back, scream the keyword, end the performance. But Agent Miller had been clear. They needed the attempt. They needed the action to begin. That there be no doubt. So I stayed where I was, on the edge, with my daughter slowly pushing me, with my son-in-law blocking my escape, with the cliff waiting below. And I whispered so low they could barely hear me. Then do it, if that's what you came to do. Do it now. The pressure on my back stopped. Mary withdrew her hand as if my skin burned. Robert took a step back. They both looked at me with expressions I couldn't decipher. Confusion, fear, maybe some guilt. What did you say, Mum? My voice came out louder this time, clearer. I was no longer trembling. I said if you came here to kill me, then just do it. Stop pretending this is a family hike. Stop acting like you care. Finish what you started. The silence that followed was absolute. Not even the birds were making noise. Mary shook her head, her eyes filled with tears that could be real or could be part of the act. I don't know what you're talking about, Mum. You're saying horrible things, things that don't make sense. Robert tried to approach, but I raised a hand to stop him. Don't come closer. Neither of you. Stay exactly where you are. Mrs. Smith, please. You're misunderstanding everything. Grief sometimes makes people think things that aren't true. I saw the documents, Robert, last night, when you were sleeping. I saw the life insurance. I saw the messages. I saw everything. Mary paled. Robert went rigid. There was no more confusion on their faces. There was only calculation. Quick assessment of the situation, of how bad things were now. Mum, if you saw that, then you have to understand. You have to understand that we had no option, that they will kill us if we don't get the money. Then get the money another way. Sell your things. Ask the bank for a loan. Do whatever it takes, but don't kill your own mother for an inheritance. It's not just inheritance, Mum. It's survival. It's saving our lives. Mary's voice rose. She was no longer trying to hide it. She was no longer pretending to be confused. Now it was brutal honesty, real desperation mixed with resentment that had probably been there for years. You think it's easy for us? You think we didn't try other options? We went to every bank. No one would give us credit. Our credit was destroyed by other previous debts. There was no legal way to get that money in the time we had. And then you thought of me? Yes, then we thought of you. There was something in the way she said it, without apology, without shame, just admitting a fact, which was more honest than all the lies they had told me before. And those people, those men Robert owes money to, are not patient. They don't negotiate. You either pay or you die. Then why didn't you tell me before? Why didn't you come to me honestly and ask for help? Because we don't have time, Mum. Because the deadline is in 3 days. Because even if you sold the house right now, the process would take weeks, months. We don't have weeks. We barely have days. Robert took another step closer. I backed up until my heels touched the edge of the cliff. Small stones broke off and fell into the void. Mrs. Smith, your house is worth $400,000. Your savings total another $200,000. The investments Mr. Arthur made are worth at least $100,000 more. You have almost $700,000 in assets. We need $100,000 to not die. It's a fraction of what you have. A fraction. And the life insurance of $500,000. That's also a fraction. My voice sounded sarcastic, bitter. Robert had the decency to look ashamed for a second. The insurance was in case this didn't work, in case we needed another option. Another way to kill me, you mean? Mary wiped her tears with the back of her hand. When she spoke, her voice was different, harder, colder than anything I had ever heard from her. We didn't want to come to this, Mum. We really didn't. But you made it difficult. Always so careful with your money. Always so distrustful. Dad was the same. Both of you saving every penny as if it were the last thing you had in the world. Never thinking about us, about what we needed, about how difficult it was to live knowing you had so much and we had so little. You have little because you spent poorly, because you made bad decisions, because you lived beyond your means. That is not our fault. Of course not, Mum. Nothing is your fault. You and Dad were always perfect. You always did everything right. While we were the failures, the disappointments, the ones who never measured up. The resentment in her voice was so old that I realized this hadn't started with the debts. This had been growing for years, maybe decades, hidden under smiles and hugs and Sunday visits. Mary had never forgiven us for being careful, for being responsible, for not giving her everything she wanted when she wanted it. Robert moved to my left, Mary to my right. Again they were flanking me. Again they were cornering me against the cliff. This doesn't have to be difficult, Mrs. Smith. It can be quick, painless. A terrible accident. We call 911. We cry. We act devastated. No one suspects anything. You no longer suffer from the loss of Mr. Arthur. And we get the money we need to survive. Everyone wins. Except me. I die. You're already dead, Mum. Since Dad died, you're just existing, wandering around that empty house, crying over a man who's no longer here. At least this way your death would have a purpose. It would save us. It would give us a chance. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't process that these words were coming out of my daughter's mouth. The child I had carried, fed, loved with every cell of my body. I'm not going to let you kill me. I'm not going to make things easy. If you want my money, you'll have to earn it another way. There is no other way, Mum. We already explained it to you. We already told you we don't have time. Then die. If you took out debts with criminals, if you gambled money you didn't have, if you lived lives you couldn't afford, then face the consequences. But don't ask me to pay for your mistakes with my life. Mary looked at me with pure hatred. There were no more tears. There was no more sadness. There was only rage. You were always so selfish, Mum. Always thinking only of yourself, of what you wanted, of what you needed. You never truly saw us. You never cared about us beyond fulfilling your role as the perfect mother. That's not true. Of course it's true. And now that we finally need you, when we finally ask you for something real, something that matters, you refuse. You prefer to cling to your money, to your house, to your things, than to save your own daughter. You are not asking me for money, Mary. You are asking me for my life. There's a difference. Robert took something out of his pocket. I couldn't see exactly what it was, but the movement was fast, threatening. I'm sorry, Mrs. Smith. I really am. But this has to end now. He took a step toward me. Mary did the same on the other side. I was trapped. The cliff behind, them in front. There was no escape. I touched the microphone under my blouse. Maybe the agents were already on their way. Maybe they had heard enough. Maybe they would arrive in time. Or maybe not. Maybe I had trusted the wrong people. Again. I closed my eyes. I thought about Arthur, his smile, his calloused hands, the way he looked at me as if I were the most valuable thing in the world. Forgive me, my love. I tried to take care of her. I tried to love her enough, but it wasn't enough. I felt hands on my arms, pushing. The world tilted. My feet lost contact with the earth. And then, screams, lots of screams. They weren't coming from me. They were coming from everywhere. Police! Freeze! Don't move! Different hands grabbed me, pulled me back, to firm ground, away from the edge. I fell to my knees on the ground, breathing, crying, alive. The agents emerged from the trees like shadows materializing. There were 6, maybe 7, dressed in hiking gear, with vests that said police in huge letters, with weapons pointed directly at Mary and Robert. On the ground, now, hands where I can see them. Robert immediately raised his hands. His face went from absolute control to panic in a matter of seconds. Mary remained paralyzed, looking at me, looking at the agents, unable to process what was happening. Mum, what did you do? Her voice was a broken whisper, full of betrayal, as if I were the one who had done something unforgivable. One of the agents helped me stand up. He was young, maybe 30 years old. His hands were firm but gentle as he held my arm and led me away from the edge, away from the cliff that had been inches from becoming my grave. It's okay, Mom. It's over. You're safe. I nodded without being able to speak. My legs were shaking so much I thought I was going to fall. The agent guided me to a large rock away from the path and helped me sit down. Breathe. Take it easy. You did great. You were very brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt destroyed. I felt as if every part of me that had ever been a mother was crumbling into pieces so small I could never put them back together. Mary and Robert were on the ground now, face down, their hands cuffed behind their backs. 2 agents guarded them while others checked their pockets, their backpacks, everything. Agent Miller appeared from the same place the others had come from. She walked directly toward me. She knelt in front of the rock where I was sitting. Her face showed relief but also tiredness, as if she, too, had been holding her breath the entire time. Mrs. Smith, we got everything, every word, every movement. We have enough proof to prosecute them for attempted premeditated murder, conspiracy, fraud, everything. I nodded again. I still couldn't find words. I know this is difficult. I know it's probably the hardest thing you've ever done. But thanks to you, 2 dangerous people won't be able to hurt anyone else. Thanks to your courage, there is justice. Justice. The word sounded hollow, empty. What kind of justice was this? My daughter on the ground in handcuffs. My son-in-law being searched like a common criminal. My family destroyed. My heart broken in ways that couldn't be repaired. I want to talk to her. My voice came out hoarse, raspy, as if I hadn't used it in years. It's not a good idea, Mrs. Smith. It's better that we maintain distance until they reach the detention center. There, you can have a supervised conversation if you wish. I need to talk to her now. Please. Agent Miller studied me for a moment. Then she nodded. She stood up and walked to where Mary was on the ground. She spoke with the other agents. There was a brief exchange. Finally, one of them helped Mary stand up. They brought her toward where I was. Her eyes were red, her face stained with dirt and tears. The handcuffs made her shoulders look uncomfortable, small, vulnerable. For a second, I saw the child she had been, the 7-year-old girl who fell off her bike and cried in my arms, the teenager who had her first heartbreak and spent an entire night in my bed while I stroked her hair, the young woman who got married full of hope and promises of a bright future. Where had I lost that girl? When had she turned into this woman who could look me in the eye while planning my death? "You have 5 minutes, no more." Agent Miller stepped away, but not too far. Enough to give us privacy, but close enough to intervene if something went wrong. Mary and I stood looking at each other. Neither of us knew how to start. What to say when the necessary words don't exist in any language? Finally, she spoke first. "You betrayed us, Mum. This whole time you were working with the police. This whole time you were setting a trap for us." Her voice had more indignation than regret, more rage than guilt, as if she were the victim here, as if I had done something unforgivable. "You were planning to kill me, Mary. You bought a life insurance policy in my name without my knowledge. You brought me to a remote location with the specific intention of pushing me off a cliff and collecting the money. And I'm the one who betrayed you? We needed that money, Mum. We explained it to you. We told you exactly why. It wasn't something we wanted to do. It was something we had to do. No one has to kill their mother, Mary. No one. No matter how much money they owe, no matter how desperate they are. There are lines that you don't cross. And you didn't just cross that line. You erased it completely." She shook her head. Tears ran down her cheeks, but her expression remained hard, defensive. "You don't understand what it's like to have real fear, Mom. Fear of being killed, of hurting the people you love. You lived your whole life safe, protected, with Dad taking care of you, with money in the bank, with a paid-off house. You never had to make impossible decisions." "You're right. I never had to decide between killing my mother or facing consequences. You know why? Because I would never have put myself in a situation where that was an option. Because your father and I lived responsibly. We worked hard. We saved. We didn't spend money we didn't have. We didn't make stupid bets. We didn't borrow money from criminals. Always so perfect, Mum. Always so superior. Always looking at us as if we were disappointments. As if we never measured up to your impossible standards. I never looked at you like that. I loved you. I supported you. I gave you everything I could give you. If you felt it wasn't enough, then that's something you have to resolve with yourselves, not with me." Robert shouted something from where he was. The agents immediately silenced him. Mary turned toward him. Then she looked at me again. There was something different in her eyes now. Something softer, more broken. "I'm going to jail, aren't I, Mum? I'm going to lose everything. My life, my future, everything." "Yes, probably yes." "And you're going to let that happen. You're not going to help me. You're not going to drop the charges. You're not going to do anything." I looked at her for a long time, thinking of all the times I had protected her, all the times I had intervened for her, that I had softened the consequences of her bad decisions, that I had put my body between her and the hard world that didn't forgive mistakes. Arthur was right. Protecting her from consequences hadn't helped her. It had only turned her into someone who believed the rules didn't apply to her, that there would always be someone who would rescue her, that she would never truly have to pay for what she did. "I'm not dropping the charges, Mary. You tried to kill me. You planned my death with coldness, with detail, without a moment of doubt until you were caught. I can't forgive that. I won't forgive that." I'm your daughter, Mum. Your only daughter. How can you do this to me? You are my daughter, and that's why this hurts more than you can imagine. But you are also an adult who made decisions, horrible decisions, and now you have to live with the consequences of those decisions. She started crying for real now, deep sobs that shook her entire body. She fell to her knees in front of me, her hands still cuffed behind her back, vulnerable, broken. Please, Mum, please don't do this. I swear I'll change. I swear I'll be better. Give me one chance, just one more. How many chances have I given you already, Mary? How many times did I rescue you from problems you created yourself? How many times did I pay your debts, cover your mistakes, lie for you? And every time you promised me it would be the last, that you would change, that you would learn. This time is different, Mum. I swear. You're right. This time is different. Because this time the consequence is not lost money or social shame. This time you plan to take my life. And that is a line that, once crossed, has no return. The agents approached. The time was up. They lifted Mary from the ground. She was still crying, still repeating please over and over like a broken mantra. I watched her walk away. I watched them take her down the trail back. I saw Robert walking ahead of her, both in handcuffs, both defeated, both heading for a future that would be very different from the one they had imagined when they planned this trip. Agent Miller sat down next to me on the rock. She didn't say anything for a long time. She just stayed there, present, silent. I did the right thing. It wasn't a question, but I needed to say it out loud. I needed to hear myself say it. You did the only thing you could do, Mrs. Smith. You chose your own life. You chose justice. You chose not to allow love to become complicity. I wiped away the tears I hadn't realized were falling. I don't feel like I won anything. You didn't win. You survived. And sometimes that's all we can do. Survive and decide what comes next. What comes next? That's for you to decide. But now we need to get down this mountain. There's a unit waiting below. We need to take your formal statement. There are papers to sign, processes to follow. She helped me stand up. My legs were still trembling, but I could stand. I could walk. I could keep going. As we walked down the trail, I looked back once, toward the cliff, toward the place where I had been standing seconds before everything ended. That was the place where Eleanor, the naive mother, had died, where the woman who trusted blindly had ceased to exist. The woman who was walking down now was different, harder, wiser, broken too, but alive, and that would have to be enough. The police station smelled of old coffee and wet paper. They sat me in a small room with cream-colored walls and a metal table. Agent Miller brought me water. Someone else brought a blanket, even though I wasn't cold. I think they just wanted me to feel cared for, protected, as if that could erase what had just happened. I spent the next 3 hours giving my statement. I repeated the story so many times that the words started to lose meaning. The airport, the house in the mountain, the documents I found, the conversations I heard, the moment on the cliff when I felt their hands pushing me. Each time I told it, it felt less real, as if it had happened to someone else, as if I were just narrating a terrible movie I had seen. I signed papers, so many papers, statements, authorizations, legal documents I barely read because I no longer cared. I just wanted it to end. I just wanted to go home, to my empty house where at least the silence was honest. When we finally finished, it was night. Agent Miller accompanied me to the waiting room. Mrs. Smith, there's something else you need to know before you leave. I looked at her, waiting, feeling too tired for more surprises. Mary and Robert asked to speak with you. Both of them. Together. It's your right to refuse the meeting. No one will force you. But they insisted strongly. They said there are things they need to tell you. Things you should know. I don't want to hear any more lies. I don't think they are lies this time. I think they finally understood the seriousness of what they did. I think they are scared, desperate, and I think maybe they need to say certain things as much as you need to hear them. I wasn't sure about that. I wasn't sure I needed to hear anything, but there was something in me, something that needed to close this chapter completely, that needed to look them in the eye one last time before they disappeared into the judicial system. Okay, I'll talk to them. The agent led me down a long corridor. Our footsteps echoed against the linoleum floor. She stopped in front of a door marked Interrogation Room Number 3. I'll be on the other side of the mirror. If at any point you feel uncomfortable or want to end the conversation, just raise your hand. I'll come in immediately. I nodded. She opened the door. Mary and Robert were sitting on the other side of a table. They were no longer handcuffed, but there was an officer standing in the corner, watching. Their faces looked different under the fluorescent lights, paler, smaller, more human than they had seemed on the mountain. I sat across from them. No one spoke for a long moment. The silence was so dense I could feel it pressing against my chest. Finally, Robert spoke first. Mrs. Smith, thank you for coming. I know you had no obligation to do so. I know you probably prefer never to see us again. But we needed to talk to you. We needed you to know some things. I'm listening. My voice came out flat, without emotion, as if I were talking to strangers. Maybe that's what they were now. The people we owe money to, they are not just loan sharks. They are not just dangerous people. They are part of an organization, a network that controls illegal gambling in 3 states. I started by betting small amounts I could pay. But addiction is like that, Mrs. Smith. You always think the next bet will be the big one, that you'll win back everything you lost. And suddenly I owed $20,000, then $40,000, then $80,000. That doesn't justify what you tried to do to me. No, it doesn't justify it. You're right. But I want you to understand that when those people told me I had 2 weeks to pay or they would kill me, when they showed me photos of other people who hadn't paid, people beaten, tortured, dead, I panicked. I entered a state of desperation where logic ceased to exist. Mary took over. Her voice was softer than on the mountain, more broken. I knew about the debts, Mum. Robert confessed to me 2 months ago. At first I was furious. I wanted to leave him. I wanted to walk away. But he convinced me that we could solve it together. We started by looking for legal loans. We went to 5 different banks. They all rejected us. Our credit was destroyed by other previous debts. There was no legal way to get that money in the time we had. And then you thought of me. Yes, then we thought of you. There was something in the way she said it, without apology, without shame, just admitting a fact, which was more honest than all the lies they had told me before. At first it was just an idea, a terrible idea that we immediately rejected. But then those people started pressuring us more. They started following Robert, threatening, sending explicit messages of what they would do to us if we didn't pay, and the idea stopped seeming so terrible. It started to seem like the only option we had. Robert continued where Mary left off, as if they had rehearsed this, as if they had planned exactly what to say. We investigated. We found out that you had enough assets to pay the debt 10 times over, We discovered that after Mr. Arthur's death, you became the sole owner of everything. The house, the accounts, the investments, everything in your name. And we calculated that if something happened to you, everything would pass to Mary as the sole heir. We could sell the house, liquidate the accounts, pay the debt, and we would still have enough left to start over. Then you bought the life insurance. Yes, the insurance was an extra, a way to ensure we would have immediate liquidity. $500,000 is paid out within weeks after an accidental death. We wouldn't have to wait months for the house to sell. We could pay the debt immediately, save our lives immediately. Mary leaned forward. There were tears in her eyes, but her voice was firm. Mum, I know what we did is unforgivable. I know we planned something monstrous. But I need you to understand that we didn't do it coldly. We didn't do it because we hated you. We did it because we were terrified, because we saw the deadline approaching and we had no other way out. There is always another way out, Mary. It's always. You could have come to me honestly. You could have told me everything. We could have looked for solutions together. We thought about it, Mum. We really thought about it. But we were afraid of your reaction, afraid you would refuse, afraid you would judge us. Dad was always so hard on us when we made mistakes, always so disappointed. We thought you would be the same. I wasn't, Arthur. I loved you differently, in a way that was perhaps too soft, too permissive. And look where that led us. Robert put his hands on the table, flat, open, like surrendering. Mrs. Smith, we are going to prison. Our attorney already explained it to us. With the evidence they have, with the recordings, with everything, we are going to be convicted, probably for many years. We accept that. We deserve it. But there is something else you need to know, something that complicates everything even more. What is it? The men I owe money to, they are not going to stop because I'm in prison. They are going to look for other ways to collect. And the easiest way, the most obvious, is to go after the people I care about, go after Mary, or go after you. I felt the air rush out of my lungs. You are threatening me now. You are saying that if I don't pay them, they will hurt me. It's not a threat, Mom. It's information. It's the reality of the situation. These people don't forgive debts. They don't forget. If Robert doesn't pay, if I don't pay, they will seek to collect in any way possible. And you have the money. You are the obvious solution for them. Mary wiped her tears. That's why we needed to talk to you, Mum. Not to ask you to drop the charges, not to ask for forgiveness that we don't deserve, but to warn you, to tell you that even though we are locked up, even though we pay for what we did, you are still in danger. And this time there will be no undercover agents protecting you. There will be no one listening. You will be alone against people much more dangerous than us. The silence that followed was absolute. I looked at my daughter, at my son-in-law, two people who had tried to kill me, who were now warning me of another danger, not out of kindness, but because that danger also reached them. How much exactly do you owe? $100,000, Mrs. Smith, with accumulated interest, maybe $110,000 now. And if I pay that debt, if I liquidate that money directly to those people, will they leave everyone alone? You? Me? Anyone? Robert nodded slowly. Yes, if the full debt is paid, if the account is closed, they have no reason to keep pressuring. It's just business for them. It's not personal. Mary looked at me with pleading eyes. Mum, I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know I should leave you alone. But if there is any part of you that still loves me, that still remembers when I was your little girl. Please, pay that debt. Not for us, for you, for your safety, because I couldn't bear to know that something happened to you because of our mistakes." I looked at her for a long time. This woman who had come from my body, who had been my joy, my purpose, my reason for living for so long. "I'll think about it." That was all I said. I stood up. I tapped the door. Agent Miller came in immediately. "I'm done here. I want to leave." She led me out without asking questions. I didn't look back. I spent 3 days locked in my house thinking. 3 days eating almost nothing, sleeping only in small naps interrupted by nightmares. 3 days checking numbers, calling the bank, calculating exactly how much I would have to sacrifice to solve the problem my daughter had created. $110,000. That was the exact figure Robert had confirmed through his attorney. The attorney had contacted Agent Miller. The agent had called me. She had told me that the police could try to negotiate with that criminal organization, that they could offer protection, that I didn't have to give in to extortion. But we all knew that was a lie. The police couldn't protect me 24 hours a day for years. They couldn't guarantee my safety every time I left my house, every time I went to the supermarket, every time I visited Arthur's grave. And I didn't want to live in fear. I didn't want to become a prisoner of my own life because of my daughter's bad decisions. So, I made a decision. On the 4th day, I went to the bank. I liquidated one of the investments Arthur had made years ago, $120,000, enough to pay the debt and still leave a margin for any additional charges they might invent. Agent Miller coordinated everything. The exchange was made in a neutral location, a public parking lot with security cameras and discreet police presence. I was not present. I didn't want to see the faces of those people. I didn't want to know anything more about that dark world where human life was traded like merchandise. The money was delivered. The debt was cancelled. A man in an expensive suit signed a document that he claimed completely closed the matter. The agent told me it was probably real, that those people did respect their agreements when they were paid, that I should be safe now. Should be. That word hung in my head for days. 2 weeks after the exchange, I went to visit Mary in jail. It was the first time I had seen her since that interrogation room. I sat across from her, separated by thick glass. We picked up the phones that allowed us to speak. She looked terrible, thinner, paler. Her unwashed hair pulled back in a ponytail. The orange uniform was too big for her. It made her look small, fragile, as if a gust of wind could carry her away. "Mom, you came." Her voice broke immediately. She started crying before I could respond. "I paid the debt, Mary. The $110,000. Everything. There is no more threat. There is no more danger for either of us." She sobbed louder. She covered her face with her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't deserve for you to do that, Mum. I didn't deserve anything from you after what we tried to do." "No, you didn't deserve it. But I did it anyway. Not for you. I did it for me. Because I don't want to live looking over my shoulder. Because I don't want your mistake to haunt me for the rest of my life. I paid to buy my peace, not your forgiveness." "I understand." There was a long silence, uncomfortable. "Your attorney contacted me. He said that with the evidence and your cooperation, you'll probably receive between 5 and 7 years. Robert, a little more because he has prior offences." "I know. They explained it to me. He also told me that you wanted me to testify on your behalf, to say that you are a good mother, a good person, that you made a mistake out of desperation." Mary looked at me with hopeful eyes. You would do that, Mum. You would help reduce my sentence? No. The word came out firm, clear, without doubt. I am not going to testify on your behalf, Mary. I am not going to stand in front of a judge and lie by saying this was a momentary mistake. Because it wasn't. It was planned, calculated, executed with coldness. And although I understand you were desperate, even though I paid your debt to protect both of us, I am not going to minimize what you did. But I'm your daughter, Mum. You are. And that's why it hurts so much. That's why it's hard for me to breathe every time I think about what happened. But being your mother doesn't mean protecting you from the consequences of trying to murder me. There's a limit, Mary, and you crossed it. She lowered her gaze, her shoulders shook with silent sobs. When you get out of prison, when you have served your sentence, if you want to try to rebuild something, some kind of relationship, I will be willing to listen to you, to consider the possibility of forgiving you someday. But that will be years from now. Not soon. I'll be old when I get out, Mum. I'll be in my 40s, maybe 50s. I'll have lost the best years of my life. I almost lost all my remaining years, so don't expect me to feel sorry for you. I stood up to leave. Mary hit the glass with the palm of her hand. Mum, wait. Please, don't go like this. I stopped. I looked at her one last time. I love you, Mary. I will always love you because you are my daughter. But I don't like you right now. I don't like the person you became. And I don't know if I can ever look at you again without seeing that moment on the cliff, without feeling your hands pushing me toward death. That is something you are going to have to live with. And so am I. I hung up the phone. I turned around. I walked toward the exit without looking back. 3 months later, I sold the house. The house Arthur built. The house where Mary grew up. The house full of memories that now suffocated me every time I walked in. I moved to a smaller apartment in another city, closer to my niece, Jennifer, my sister's daughter, who died years ago. Jennifer had 2 young children who welcomed me with hugs and laughter, who called me Grandma even though we weren't directly related by blood. Jennifer helped me organize my new life, decorate the apartment, find new routines, new purposes. She invited me to dinner every Sunday. She included me in birthdays and celebrations. She made me feel part of a family again. I invested the rest of Arthur's money safely. I consulted with attorneys. I made a new will. I left everything clearly established. The house where the money would grow that would someday be for Jennifer's children. For the people who had shown me real love. Unconditional love. Without calculations. Sometimes I think about Mary. I wonder how she is. If she has found some kind of peace in prison. If she has used that time to reflect. To truly change. Other times I hate her. I hate what she did to me. I hate what she destroyed. I hate that she took away my ability to be a mother without fear. But most of the time, I simply feel nothing. And maybe that's the saddest thing of all, that my own daughter became a stranger, someone I cannot trust, someone who exists in my memory but no longer in my present. Agent Miller calls me every 2 months to check that I'm okay, that there are no new threats. She tells me I did the right thing, that I saved my life, that I am brave. I don't feel brave. I feel broken. But I keep going because that's the only thing I can do. Arthur would have been proud, or maybe he would have been heartbroken. I'll never know. What I do know is this. I learned that love is not enough, that being a mother doesn't mean sacrificing yourself until you disappear, that there are limits that must exist even in the most sacred relationships. I learned that I deserve to live, that my life has value, that I am not a means to anyone's ends. And I learned that family is not always blood. Sometimes it's the people who choose to stay, who choose to love you without asking for anything in return, who choose to see you as a person and not as a resource. Eleanor Smith, 69 years old, widow, survivor. That's who I am now, and for the first time in a long time, that is enough.